Hi, I'm Rihanna. Let's talk about books. I decided on March yet, but let's talk about February. So in February, I read, let's see, this will be I read 8 books. First one I finished would be Cruel Prince by Holly Black. Now, did I hate it? No. Did I love it? Also no. Now, everyone loved it. There was a ton of hype on it, which is why I finally bought it. I didn't buy it for a really long time. And then The Wicked King came out, and then I saw this, and it was marked down, and I was like, fine. So I read it, and I read it in like one sitting. Didn't take long. But I guess I just didn't love it. It was good. It was not great, in my opinion. Now, I have tried to read Holly Black before. I tried The Darkest Part of the Forest. Same thing. I DNF'd it. I did not even finish it. I just didn't like it. But everyone was freaking out about this. So yes, it was good. I found it kind of boring, truthfully. I did not like the one character. And I did not like some of the situations that Jude was put into. They were very uncomfortable for me to read at times. And I know I watched Jesse the Reader, and he talked about this, and he mentioned that some of the scenes were kind of uncomfortable for him too. But I read that. I did not give it a low rating by any means. I think I gave it like a 3.75 out of 5 stars, so that was the first one. The next book I read was City of Thieves by David Benioff. Great, little but super teeny tiny. Been on my shelf for a really long time. Reagan recommended it on her channel, said that it was great. So I got it, and then I was looking for just something short to read one day and picked this up, and it's great. It's unexpected. It's very unexpected. It focuses on 2 men who are both in the army, the Russian army, I'm pretty sure. And they are both arrested. One is arrested for looting a corpse, and the other one is arrested for desertion, I think, which both were kind of misunderstandings, but they are given this task to go find a dozen eggs for the wedding cake of the colonel's daughter, and if they can do that, then they can go back to being in the army, and it's fine, and it's an impossible task, obviously, because no one has any food. So it just follows them interacting with people during World War II. This is set like full-blown during World War II, so Nazi occupation in a lot of parts. So very interesting, very quick. I gave it like a 4.5 out of 5 stars. Really great, really clever, very interesting characters. I would recommend this. The next book that I read was a reread, and it was Heartless by Marissa Meyer. I have a book club at work, and this was one of the books that we read, and I finished it late. I love this book. I absolutely adore it. 5 out of 5 stars. I do not enjoy Marissa Meyer's other work, is what I have found. I tried reading Lunar Chronicles before I read this. I read this maybe 2 years ago, and I tried to read Lunar Chronicles before I got to this. I got through Cinder and Scarlet, and then started whatever the next one is. And I just was not invested in it, and I was not going to make myself read giant chunky books and not enjoy them. So I kind of gave up on that. I'm not a huge sci-fi fan, so that's probably what did it. But in any case, I bought this because people were saying it was good, and it sat on my shelf because I knew I didn't really like her other stuff. And then finally I picked it up one day, and I flew through it. What a fantastic book. Absolutely devastating. Great if you love Alice in Wonderland. So yeah, it was a fun reread. I had been wanting to reread it for a while, and then we chose it for our book club group, and 5 out of 5 stars again. So I read Bone Gap by Laura Ruby, which came out a few years ago. I think this won the Prince Award when I was in college, so it was a few years ago. I got this book when it first came out. I got it off of Amazon for my birthday one year, the year that it came out, and it just sat. It has sat on my shelves now for, God, if I got into college, I was sat for about 4 years now, I'd say. Obviously, it's well regarded. Not a ton of YouTube people have talked about it from what I have seen, but I just decided to pick it up one day. Good book. Not my favorite. I liked certain parts of it more. It is a dual perspective, and it is a very odd magical realism type deal going on. And the dual perspectives, for the most part, that is not to say that all of the dual perspectives are like this. However, the multi-perspectives kind of jump between reality and then the magical realism side of the plot. I was not a fan of the magical realism part. I usually like magical realism, but this one, I don't know, it's just weird, which everyone said. I have a friend who read it, and that was her main thing, just, it's very weird. E. Lockhart blurbed it, and I did not like We Were Liars at all. At all. I think I gave it like 2 stars. Not that that's an insult to the book in any way. Obviously, it was a National Book Award finalist, and it won a Prince Award, so obviously it's a good book. I just did not vibe well with the magical realism. I think my issue is that it's kind of southern, kind of gritty, kind of dark, and I was anticipating something more like, The Serpent King, which is like right here somewhere in this area. The Serpent King by Zentner. I can't see the title from over here, but that was an excellent book. I absolutely adored that. Again, small southern town, kind of gritty, not magical realism. It's a contemporary young adult. But I think maybe I was expecting something more like that, and that's why I was excited about it, so that's why I got disappointed, because I'm like, oh, this is going to be like The Serpent King. And then it wasn't, and then I was disappointed, which isn't necessarily fair, because if I wanted to read The Serpent King, I guess I could have just reread The Serpent King. But overall, I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I did not dislike it by any means. I loved the perspectives of all the different people in Bone Gap. I loved just the concept of Bone Gap. Like, I liked that the portion of the book that is supposed to be kind of the more reality side also had magical realism tied into it. That's more of the magical realism I like, where it's rooted in a very natural reality. Does that make sense? Like, it's magic, but it's something that, it's not so over-the-top magic that everyone freaks out about it. It's just very odd, coincidental, slightly eerie things. That's what I liked about it. So that's why I liked that a bit more. Like, I liked the roads that, you know, ended you up in different places, and the magic horses and whatever. But when it got into, like, the kingdom stuff, it was weird for me. It just... So that's why it's a 4-star, not a 5-star. But good book, written absolutely beautifully. Like, the lyricism going on is great. Great pro tag. Great pro tag. So, I would recommend it. I did finally finish the City of Bones series. I did read City of Heavenly Fire. I do not have a copy of it. I got the copy from the library, but you all know what it looks like. I'm pretty sure I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars. I mean, it was great. I had never read the series all the way through before, so this was my first read through of the series. I've been reading it over a course of a few months, and just finally finished it. Finally got around to the last book. Huge book. Flew through it. Great. Just great. Just absolutely great. Heartbreaking in some parts. Like, I'm obviously not going to spoil anything. Not that there's probably anyone left to spoil in this world, because everyone has read this book series except for me. But Simon. Next, I read Twilight, which was a reread from like 6th grade, maybe? I don't know. It was February and I wanted to read something very cheesy and something just garbage. So I read Twilight. Quick read, obviously. Very simple. Definitely not a super elevated bit of prose. But fun, you know, problematic. We all know it's problematic. It's problematic. But fun, you know. I gave it like 3 out of 5 stars. Super insta-lovey. Super just, yeah, it is what it is. I read Twilight, 3 out of 5 stars. I then read Stags by M.A. Bennett, which was something that I had never heard of, and one day was looking at books. I think I looked up like books like Pretty Little Liars. I love Pretty Little Liars. I am trash for that trash. And it came up on a list, and it's, you know, preppy boarding school, shady kids, the elite kids are shady, and then the ones who aren't elite get invited for a weekend away with the elite kids, and then things go awry. It gets very dark very quickly. And I thought that it was gonna be just, I don't know, like a fun little YA contemporary thriller type thing, and it got super dark super quick. I actually really enjoyed it. It was much darker than I thought it would be. It was blurbed to be like Pretty Little Liars meets Hunger Games, and it totally was, with a much bigger emphasis on Hunger Games. It was wild. The second book comes out this August, and I am definitely pre-ordering it the second it becomes available to pre-order. And then the last book that I read for the month of March was Verity by Colleen Hoover, and Hoover a lot. I have read her. I read Ugly Love, adored it, thought it was fabulous. I read it in college. I make everyone read it. It's 5 out of 5 stars every single time. I plow my way through it when I want to be sad. But this one was short. I was on vacation. I was looking for just short books to kind of fly through while I was away for a week. And I got this one on my phone, and oh my goodness. So, goodness gracious. Verity, it's a writer goes to live in a house to be essentially like a ghost writer for another writer who is now in a coma, essentially. And she is living in this house, and she's trying to go through all the research for the book series to continue it, and the woman's husband still lives in the house, and something begins between the writer and the husband, but then the writer starts uncovering all these very dark notes about the wife, and it's just, oh my god, it is wild, and it's saucy, so, you know, it was perfect. It was great. I loved it. 5 out of 5 stars. Super quick read. Very cool. So, like, very dark. Very dark. So if you don't want like disturbing things, don't read it. Or if you don't want explicit sex, don't read it. However, if those things don't bother you, go ahead and read it. So very quickly, the books that I'd like to read in March, I will definitely be trying to finish all of these. So really quick, Foundry Side. I don't have the dust jacket on it because I'm reading it and I always take the dust jackets off. I think I've got the dust jacket right here. Foundry Side, Adult High Fantasy, very cool magic system. I'm not going to try and explain this because this video is long enough. Please just look it up on Goodreads. It's very good. Working my way through the Game of Thrones series. I'm further than this because I got it on my phone, so I've been kind of reading through it. So I'm a little bit further than that, but they take a bit. They're hefty. But I'm on the second one, Clash of Kings. Loving it. Haven't read the books before. Obviously, I've watched the series. I'm trying to read the books now because I don't have my HBO subscription anymore, so I'm not going to be able to watch the new season when it comes out anyway. So I'm just going to read the books and forget that everyone's watching the show, and I'm not. Yeah. Then, me and everyone else on BookTube, Daisy Jones and the Six, pre-ordered this. It came, it's Thursday, it came on Monday or Tuesday, I think. Sounds good. Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll is the blurb that keeps popping around. Reese Witherspoon blurbed it, and she played Elwood, so I'll trust anything that she does. But I've heard that it's pitched to fans of Stevie Nicks, but it's just a girl and her band, and the band falling apart, and her falling apart when she gets swept up in rock and roll. To me, it sounds a lot like The Runaways is what it reminds me of. If you've seen the movie The Runaways, based on the band The Runaways, this sounds a lot like what the movie ends up being, which I'm totally into. Not that long, less than 400, like just, it's barely over 300. So, quick read, why not? Everyone flipped out about The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo, which I've yet to read as well. It's on my phone. Everyone loves it. I'm gonna read it. I'm sure I'll like it, but I just haven't gotten to it yet. This was a recommendation by one of the Barnes & Noble employees. Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. And it's basically just, it's a bunch of short stories. I really like short stories. I tend to, my main type of writing that I prefer to do is actually short stories. But yeah, it's just dark, more gothic fairy tales, which I'm very into, so again, super itty bitty. It'll take like an hour to read, why not? This is, I'm gonna finish this up, almost done with it. Spinning Silver by Naomi Novik. Very good, kind of slow, very similar to Uprooted in the way that it's written. I mean, it's written like a fairy tale. I'm enjoying this much more than I enjoyed Uprooted. The reason I didn't pick up Spinning Silver for so long is because Uprooted took me so long to read. It sounded right up my alley. It sounded great. It sounded super interesting. There was the concept of a dragon involved, which I love dragons. It took me forever. I found it so boring. So boring. So I got Spinning Silver, again, because Reagan talked about it, and I trust Reagan with every book recommendation, and she said it was like the best book she'd ever read in her life. So, you know, I got it, and it sat on my shelf for like months and months, and finally picked it up because I kept looking at it, and I kept seeing it, like, I really want to read it, I really want to see what it's all about. So I started it, and I do really like it. There are some slower parts, not nearly as slow as Uprooted. I love the multi-perspectives. I love all of the women in this story. They're so badass. They're fantastic. I love this concept of the Ice King and the Ice Queen, and I'm really liking it. A little slow, so it's taking me a little longer than a book this size usually would. Usually like a 400-page book I could read in 1 or 2 days. This has taken me, it's been like a week and a half now that I've been working through it. I should finish it today, but I'm excited to finish it. I feel like it's gonna be intense at the end. It's feeling like one of those books. And the last book that I would like to get through, as I mentioned earlier, is Tales from the Shadowhunter Academy. I miss Simon. I miss him. I need him. I need as much Simon as I can get. So I will be reading that. There's only 10 short stories in that bind up, which I know they're chunkier. I mean, it's not going to be short, but it looks like, I don't know, I don't think it's as long as the Magnus Bane Chronicles. I could be very wrong. Magnus Bane Chronicles could be longer. I don't know. It just felt like it looked shorter. I don't know. But after that, in the publication order, I think is Lady Midnight, so I will finally be joining that hype. So we'll see. So that was my wrap up, and that was my TBR for the upcoming month. So in a month, I guess we'll see how well I did. But happy reading, and